Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really bad at intros, so that's my intro. I'm Mike Hattery from Everybody Hates Cleveland. I'm here with Jim Pete. Also, we're all from Everybody Hates Cleveland. Jeff Nauman is here as well. He's more prominently known as a formerly important person, which he no longer is, but we're talking to him anyway because we're all
So,
about
so
charity.
wait. Let me just say something before we get into baseball. And I know we got a lot to talk there, Jeff. I mean, LeBron unfollowed the Cavs for no reason. Dude, you got reason. Are you still following the Cavs?
I assume that he unfollowed because they took me out of the spot.
That's what
Without
I'm
me,
saying, man. I mean,
without
come
me as
on.
social, what reason
Oh,
do you have to
see.
even follow us? That's what I think.
Oh, see, we can spin anything at EHC. That's good. All right, sorry, Mike. Back to you. I'm sorry.
Uh, yeah, I mean, so we have a bunch of really boring outfield stuff to talk about because it's been 6 months and we still have a lot of really boring outfield stuff to talk about because it's really bad. So let's go there. Um,
I think
the
the term that
first
Antonetti used on the radio today was it's in flux.
influx. Antonetti is much more educated than any of us, so he's much better at putting a spin on it. Uh, a la influx. So let's talk about influx. Nick Cafardo said that the Indians and the Red Sox are talking. He said it's probably around Rusney Castillo. He sort of, I don't think he really puts a name on a player. He guesses it's Castillo because he can't imagine the sort of parameters of a Jackie Bradley deal. But each of us has a little bit of a thing for Jackie Bradley Jr. What would it take?
Gosh, what would it take? So you hear the name Jackie Bradley Jr., and I guess if you've been following Jackie Bradley Jr., you get these top prospect and all of baseball thoughts, and he's a speedy center fielder who has Gold Glove capabilities, proven Gold Glove capabilities, who had a fantastic, I guess, two months. And gosh, Jeff, we were talking off air about how comparable to Lonnie Chisenhall that was, and now I'm starting to see your point. But I think if you work off a hype, which the Indians front office never does, you're looking at it's still not one of the big three pitchers, but you're looking at Cody Anderson, Trevor Bauer, and another top prospect. If you look at the numbers and how the overall numbers, as you should, as our front office will, you'd be looking at probably one of those two pitchers, Bauer and Anderson, and then someone else. Like you mentioned, Mike, not to steal your thunder off air, you mentioned Rob Kaminsky, and that would be, to me, a throw-in for the Indians they'd be okay with because really he's a non-entity to the organization right now, being that he's never played in any sort of meaningful game. So, I think he's one of our starting pitchers past the big three, and another prospect who's further down the line. Now, what the Red Sox want is a whole other thing. So they're going to be pounding the door for one of the big three, probably Salazar, maybe straight up, which is ridiculous. I'd never do that. So I guess, the Indians will do it. Obviously, they're talking. The question is, will the Red Sox, do they want one of our starters bad enough, and will another team not offer more?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I sort of wonder how much. I feel like the sort of hype that Clevenger has in Cleveland hasn't quite reached outside of the big giant wall we have around the city to keep everyone out. And I wonder if that's starting to escape a little bit. I wonder if somebody like Clevenger is somebody who would be a big name for them. I know he's not quite ready yet, but what kind of level is he reaching, especially with a pretty nice spring he's putting together?
And he's close. He's close.
Like a
He's close.
Clevenger and a Naquin or something to replace what Jackie Bradley. I don't know. I have no concept of what they would be looking for. But I'm just trying to come up with names that make sense that replaces Jackie Bradley Jr. as well as gives them a pretty top end, looking pitching prospect that's close to ready.
The Red Sox rotation is really interesting. You have some classical underperformers with good stuff, and Porcello and Kelly. You have Rodriguez, who's out until at least May. This is a rotation that doesn't have a ton of depth. Clevenger really seems like a guy who would be a really good fit for them long term if you can give another solid asset up along the way. I guess the next question is,
would you do Bauer and Clevenger?
no.
Okay, now think about this. I mean, now think about this. Clevenger is a guy we got from another organization. He's great. I think he's going. We talked about him before, but again, as far as entities go with our starting rotation, he's a guy I think you could look at first. And Bauer, where are they at with him? I mean, does Bradley fill the holes? And do you need him for long term because of the guys we got coming up? I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing names out there.
What do you think, Jeff?
I'm more okay with trading Bauer, I think, than a lot of people. And I like Bauer. I feel like maximizing that asset would probably be trading him now while there's still some hype that he could, make some sort of leap. I'm sort of resigning myself to the idea that he's not going to. He's going to be a 3, 4, 5 type starter. So if somebody else values him as something more than that, I'm perfectly fine trying to flip him now while that's still there. If Bauer and Clevenger, that's a lot.
There goes your depth.
And like I said, I'm looking at Jackie Bradley's junior. I mean, he's had one good month, and that was very BABIP and inflated, and that just the defense is awesome. I love the defense, but man, giving up 2 nice MLB close to ready pitchers who have a lot of control left for a guy like that I don't think that's the best use of assets.
I think that's the really interesting thing that makes Bradley maybe more affordable than we think he is. I think we sort of have discussed Bradley as if he's someone out of the price range, and I think the small sample size of success with him, puts him a little closer to affordable than we may think, or certainly I thought moving into the fall. Is there the reason this is in flux? We heard Antonetti say this is in flux today. 2 days ago, we have Ken Rosenthal talking about how dissatisfied the Indians are. Today, we have Nick Cafardo firing off these links. So we can interpret this a couple of ways. What way does it go? Is Cafardo just jumping, where there's smoke, there's fire? He's going to link the Indians. He's going to get some clicks. Or do we have sort of 3 data points that would lead us to say the Indians don't really like the idea of Naquin, Chisenhall, and Brantley on opening day? They're going to make a deal, or they're doing their best to make a deal. Are they being more proactive than sort of what we think?
And I could be wrong. Hasn't Rosenthal broken a lot of the Indian stories this winter?
Yeah. I mean, Mike and I were
somebody who's just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, see, that's Mike and I were just talking off air, and a lot of people were shooting down Rosenthal like he was some kind of ragtag journalist. But I think in the past year especially, he's been on everything with the Indians and been pretty dead on with the Indians. So when I saw Rosenthal, that really perked my interest. And the other thing to think about here is it's kind of funny that the Red Sox Cafardo from the Globe is the one leaking this out. I don't know what his relationship is with Francona, good or bad. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if the Indians want to smokescreen another team, say the Marlins. Maybe you throw that out to the Boston and say, hey, could you guys just throw this in a news column? Shake up the Marlins a little bit. We're going after this guy. I don't know. Maybe there's something else to this. Maybe this is a side screen that maybe the Indians are looking at someone else, maybe trying to shake an apple from a tree.
That's a spectacular point that I hadn't even tied the Tito to Boston thing together at all. That's very interesting.
I mean, if Tito is sort of using, if Tito can use Cafardo like that, that would be spectacular. I would love that. If Tito could get Ozuna via Nick Cafardo, with price suppression, I would lose my freaking mind. That'd be absurd. Where do we? I guess the question is another one. We have a flooded market. I mean, we have Ozuna. The Red Sox. We have Desmond Jennings, I think, in Tampa Bay. The outfield market hasn't been lean. So why are we still talking about the Indians trying to make an outfield move? I mean, this is one of the most sort of full outfield markets we've seen in like 5-6 years, and the Indians still didn't come away with a starter for center field. Are they going to come away with one between now and April 4th, or are we just going to April 4th with Tyler Naquin?
I feel like it's been a tease all winter. I mean, that's why, Jim, I know that you were saying, like, why isn't anybody talking about this? We just had a juicy tribe rumor. Well, at some point it's, the boy who cried wolf. We've been hearing that the Indians were going to make a major trade, make a major this, make a major that. I feel like since the day the season ended, and it hasn't happened. So, I mean, like, the money is always on them going into the regular season with Naquin or Venable or Davis or God, I can't even come up with anything worse than the last two. But it looks like that's what it's going to be. But yeah, I agree. This seems like both free agency and the trade market has been a ton of outfield options, and the fact that they're still here 2 weeks before opening day and haven't filled that just seems outlandish.
Well, Chisenhall's playing like crap, and I'm not going to go down that road. I know I say that in every podcast, and I did write a piece on him today. So if we go down that road, it's fine. And I know it's just spring, but that can't have management happy. You sign Davis, to platoon or take over left until Brantley's ready. Now out of nowhere, Brantley's ready. Or is he? I don't know. I mean, does he play center now? Do you really want to put the guy who's hurt in center? I mean, the fact that they're actually literally addressing this with the media is very strange to me. This is not what the Indians do. I don't. Are they trying to wake Chisenhall up? Is that what they're doing? Is Brantley more sore than we think?
Well,
I mean, this is all strange. I mean, this is really strange. I mean, we're 10 days away from opening day, and they're talking trade, and they're talking with the Red Sox. And Cafardo, who's working with the Globe and is one of those guys that always end up in big papers with shaking out rumors, is talking about a deal and saying it's not Bradley, but it probably is. So none of this makes sense. I mean, they're talking about dealing when they have 67 outfielders, none of them who can play center. So obviously they're looking for a guy who can play center. So I don't know. I mean,
especially interesting the fact that we just signed Bird, and Naquin has been just raking. If ever there was a time where, hey, I mean, I've been on the ledge ready to jump off the 40 bridge about the outfield all winter, and now all of a sudden, they bring Bird in, Naquin's raking. I mean, even I am kind of like, all right, hey, this all kind of makes sense now. They kind of fell into something that's going to work for them. And then all of this breaks. It's just very odd that, it finally feels like they're to a place, and we're very close to the season. It seems like the absolute last time that they would be getting aggressive and looking, and here we are.
I don't understand one piece to me, and to me the Naquin piece makes so little sense. Naquin's a guy who the Indians have sort of used their outlets. They've used Pluto and Bastion. Pluto since I think December. And others have mentioned Naquin had a really good shot to make this team just as an extra outfielder when we were still presuming Almonte was the starting outfielder. So the whole Naquin thing and him not being guaranteed a spot after raking in spring, I sort of felt at this point if they were going to commit to him in center, they would have done it. And they haven't done it publicly. All they've said is he's done everything we could expect of him. He's blown away our expectations. None of it committing to a center field spot, which means one of two things to me. One, I'm going to be really pissed off when we start Will Venable in April. Or two, they have another plan. They have a deal sitting on the table or a couple of deals, and they're trying to figure out which one to take. I just don't understand the restlessness now with Bird and Naquin. I don't get it at all.
Well, okay, so let's add more to the fire. So you've got this article that comes out, I think Bastion wrote it, and this is going another direction, but you'll see where I'm going right away. Josh Tomlin being, he's a malleable piece. He can work out of the pen. He can be a good starter. Then on the heels of that, you've got Cody Anderson mentioned again, and I believe it was another major, I don't know if it was Bastion, but I think it was MajorLeagueBaseball.com, talking about his increased velocity and his locating the ball, and he's pitched great this spring. So, not a lot about Bauer other than him, having the cops show up all the time because of his drones. So are they? I mean, is this? I mean, I don't know. It's Antonetti. I mean, is he working some sort of like scam here? Is there something going on? It seems like they're lining these guys up. They're pumping up Anderson. Is this a message that Bauer's on the way out? Or are they blowing up Anderson to try to get him to Boston or to Florida? I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's a lot going on, that there's going to be a move. Everything they're doing looks like there's going to be a move. So now I'm almost going to be pissed. So what? There's not going to be a move? we're not going to have a good center fielder, and they're going to send Naquin down. And I'm sorry, I can't get past the fact he's still wearing number 72. Every time I see that, I'm like, geez. I mean, at least give him a number that makes it look like he's going to stick with the club. I mean, he's 72. I mean, come on. I mean, give him, I don't know, give him like a half or something. I don't know. I don't. Either this is going to be great, something's going to happen, and we're all going to be happy, or it's just going to be the same crap, and they're going to send Naquin down, and we're all going to blame Francona, and I don't know. They're going to wait for Almonte, and we're all going to. I don't know. I don't know. I'm already coming down off this Bradley thing, Mike. You need to pump me up, dude. I'm down, and come on.
It's not going to happen. This offseason is just like one. Every
rewind
time.
Rewind us 30 minutes ago. You're like, hurry up, get on so we can talk about Bradley. Now we're already ready to.
Everything is just this confluence of events with this offseason where every time we're like, wow, this really makes sense. The assets are right. This should be a deal we can put together. This is a deal that makes sense. And the Indians don't get it done. And I'm not talking about Austin Jackson. I'm talking about somebody that actually makes center field better. And those deals have been out there, and the Indians haven't taken advantage. I have so little optimism. I feel like I've been led on this entire offseason by women who are constantly more attractive than me. I just keep getting let down, and it's getting harder and harder to get up for these silly rumors. And it's finally going to happen, and I'm just going to be in complete denial about it.
You've left me in shock. I don't even know where to go with that.
Yeah, I struggle with that analogy because no one's better looking than me, but I think just as a theory, I understand what you're saying. But I agree. It's kind of, you almost wonder if Naquin playing this well caught them off guard, or like they're almost like, oh crap, what do we do now? Like it almost feels like he wasn't the plan based on the trade rumors, based on everything that's happened, and I don't know how you send him down at this point. I mean, Venable is a disaster so far this summer or spring, and he's just raking, and it's just hard to see what the next move is here.
Well, they need a center fielder who's actually a center fielder, and if it's not Naquin, I mean,
it's very obvious that Naquin is the only choice for center field. I mean, there's Venable's not a legit thing that you can convince me of if they're prioritizing defense now. And Rajai Davis every day doesn't make any sense. The fact that they're being so coy about Naquin is just weird.
I don't know. So this comes back, and Mike, maybe you can talk a little bit about this, because they trade for Ramsey a couple years ago, and he seemed like a guy who, while not uber talented, was a guy with some upside who can play center, can play all the outfield positions, and we've been waiting for him to come up. Zach Walter's another guy, and I don't want to open that can of worms, but it seems like they've had guys in the past who have intriguing skills, or at least need an opportunity, and there seem to be these guys that they just won't open the window for, and then and this is nothing against Tyler Holt. I like Tyler Holt. He's a great player for this club. He's served a certain purpose. But they bring Tyler Holt up all the time, when you see all these other intangibles with these other guys. Now, Naquin, I mean, he's at least as good as Tyler Holt, right? I mean, and Holt came up with this club, so why are we even talking about this? Why haven't they just said Naquin's playing center? It makes no sense. Didn't Holt start the year off with the team last year? No, he didn't, but they brought him up pretty quick.
Yeah, he was up and down quite a bit. I'm like the high guy on Tyler Naquin, which is super scary because for like 4 years at IBI, I beat the crap out of him every time I rode around the farm, and I got message board abused, which was always fun. I really enjoyed that. I don't know. Naquin's floor seems good to me. He's going to make contact. He's going to hit for a decent average. He's going to get on base a little bit, and he's going to play competent defense. His floor is the selling point to me. I think he's not going to be terrible. I think Will Venable could be awful. I think Rajai Davis could be awful this year. I think Cowgill could be awful. I think Naquin probably has a higher floor than those guys, and he hasn't played in bigs yet. And I may be overvaluing his defense, but I don't get this at all. I think if they were going to commit to him starting on opening day, it would have happened at couple of days ago. We shouldn't be waiting till like 4 days before the first pitch for Tyler Naquin to figure out if he has a big league job or not.
I mean, and this is, I understand what spring is. We all do. I mean, we've been around the block a few times with the Indians. We know spring is, we've seen, again, not to bring him up, but we've seen Chisenhall rake during the spring and then walk into the regular season and look like Lonnie Chisenhall. So we get what spring is. I get that. But he hits a couple of home runs today, big whoop, I guess. I mean, I don't, what does he need to do? At this point, if you're playing for the Cleveland Indians and you're competing for a job where there is no tangible player, there's no tangible player. If you're talking about Venable, and I'm going to call him Max Venable even though it's Will Venable just because that's the way it's going to be from now on. If you're talking about a guy like Venable, that's fine as long as you've got somebody waiting in the wings. And I'm not talking about Almonte 80 games from now, and even then, who are we talking about? We have nobody to play center field who is a regular, everyday, I can play offense too center fielder. We don't have that guy. I mean, unless you move Lonnie Chisenhall to center, which I almost would be intrigued with, based simply on the fact that it would be a fun train wreck to watch. And, whoever's listening to this, I'm not out to get him. I'm just kind of throwing things against the wall because that seems to be what the Indians are doing right now. I mean, what are you going to do, piecemeal a bunch of 35-plus players into center? I mean, come on. I mean, there is no other center fielder. He at least has offense. He may suck offensively, Naquin, but we don't know that. He could have upside. He's showcasing it in the spring. Isn't that what spring's all about when you don't have anyone? Are they really going to put Brantley in center field? Come on. I mean, the guy's coming off surgery, and he shouldn't be back till almost May, and he might be back at the beginning of the year. Is anybody worried about that? I am. I mean, I'm happy he can maybe come back and play, but I mean, this is ridiculous. I can't even believe we're having this conversation. Go out and get someone, or just put Naquin in and be done with it.
If they're waiting on Almonte, that's just terrifying. I mean, he is not exactly somebody to be overly excited about or to trust before. And now, you have to question if anything he did last year wasn't somewhat inflated. And if you take the power numbers away and some of that away, I mean, waiting on him, it's not like his defense was something we felt was super sustainable or great to begin with. So if Almonte is something that is at all in consideration for the future right now, that's terrifying to me. I mean, Zimmer is going to be closer than Almonte at that point to me 80 games into the season. And I know that he's nowhere near ready, but geez, that's just terrifying.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's really interesting to me in this is Zimmer is like a competent first 60 games away from being we're ready time. This is he's a college bat, and he's getting close to, is he 24 now? He's a college bat. I mean, he should be ready to go. He's a top of the draft college bat, and if he hits well in Akron for the first 3 or 4 months, it's time to roll him out there. So I think, holding out for Almonte just doesn't make any sense. Plugging the holes for incompetency is always a great idea.
Well, okay, look at this. Okay, so put Naquin in center. Just put him in center. You put him in center field. You put Bird on the 40-man. That's 2 spots they got to clear out, by the way, so that gets intriguing when you start talking trade. You platoon Bird with Chisenhall, or you flat out replace him, and we can get into that in a second.
Stop it.
No, just hold on a second. No. First of all, no. I mean, no offense, Mike, but Bird has track record. I mean, if you want to walk down that path, we can, because this will be a very short debate. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, you do have your 51 games. I'll give you that. But so whatever. So okay, Lonnie starts. Great. You platoon him with Bird. You got Brantley in left, or Rajai Davis until Brantley's ready, or you platoon or whatever. You put okay, so things kind of shake out pretty well, right? So you also you have J. Ram who can play in the outfield. You have, if in a pinch, you have Chisenhall who can play third base, probably play first base if you need him to. I mean, you put Naquin in center, things start to shake out around this. I mean, the fact is, Mike, and you'll agree with me, I mean, if you wanted to put Bird in right field and you wanted to use Chisenhall in a utility role, you could do that. That's how a center fielder can shake around this team, especially considering the fact that Lonnie Chisenhall is hitting nothing right now. So, I mean, you could buy him time. I'm just saying Naquin gives this team kind of what it needs. Now, again, I don't know what he brings offensively, but don't you at least want to find that out? Like, don't you want to give this kid a chance? I mean, he's raking right now. And remember, Mike, when we talked about outfielders 3 weeks ago, weren't we talking about finding a guy who was hot, who we could plug into the lineup for a couple of weeks until Brantley's ready? Isn't that what Naquin's doing right now? I mean, come on, this is insanity to me. Now, I don't know, percentage-wise, guys, what do you think about this trade? I mean, are they really looking for a trade? I mean, does any of this make sense?
I think it only makes sense on Jackie Bradley Jr. I don't really see anybody else that makes sense. If it's specifically talking to Red Sox, obviously, there's a guy in Marlins that I think we'd all be pretty happy with. So, I think it only makes sense if you're trading for an everyday center fielder, and that feels like a pretty big trade to make at this stage in the game. Are the Red Sox really willing to give that up? We talk about 2 weeks before the season we don't have center field figured out. Are those teams ready to open up a hole? Are the Marlins ready to open up a hole? Or the Red Sox ready to open up a hole like that? It just doesn't seem likely that anything at this point would get done. It's hard to believe that a trade of, not that it's a huge, massive blockbuster, but a trade of that level would get done at this point.
Yeah, I still really have my eyes on Desmond Jennings, and not because I want him, just because I think that they actually have a little bit of an overflow in Tampa. The Red Sox don't make a ton of sense in that. Like, Castillo makes sense as someone for the Red Sox to deal, as an asset for them to move, but he doesn't make sense as an asset for the Indians. He's paid too much, and he doesn't play great center field defense, so I don't really know how you'd stick him there. I guess it doesn't make much sense to me. The Cubs and the Rays both have this sort of overflow in the outfield, and I think so. To me, Jennings or like whoever the overflow in Chicago is, you can try and make a move at the margins there. But I think it's like 15% chance they make a move, and I would not bet a lot on the Red Sox.
Do you think there's a better chance that they make a trade or they send Naquin down?
Oh, jeez. Holy that plays with the mind a bit. Oh, gosh.
There's a better chance they send Naquin down and don't make a trade than they make a trade, and that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh, boy. I don't even yeah, I mean, there's Naquin's got to make this team. I guess at the end of the day, as I work through all this, he's got to be the center fielder. I think I don't fault the Indians for anything they've done yet this offseason, aside from addressing center field. And it seems like they're trying to do that, but they have a guy who's doing everything you're asking him to do, who was a number one pick. And I understand why he was a number one pick. I get all the dynamics of that, but he was a number one pick. He has improved, as Mike, you had a piece about this maybe last year, maybe it was early this year, talking about Naquin, again, a high IQ guy. He's improved every year. He's improved his strikeout, so this is a guy who can get on base. He's got speed. He's got a good arm. He's got good defense. He's got upside with the bat. He's at the age where he should be up. I mean, what do you do? I mean, either, and if he doesn't come up now, what message did you send this kid? I don't know. I mean, and the Bradley thing is this. Who takes over? Okay, so Bradley comes over to the Indians. Betts plays center. Who do they have? Like, this move makes no sense, which is why maybe Naquin is part of the deal. I mean, maybe they're showcasing him for a deal. I don't know, but I mean, what do you really get for Naquin? So, I don't know. I don't know. Now I'm starting to get pissed.
The Naquin, like, you can't send him down, like, because the ridiculous thing about him is the Indians can't make the sort of like passive, they're not allowed to talk about service time thing, but they're doing service time with Naquin because A, he's too old, and B, he's just not that valuable to screw with service time. So they don't really have the service time defense. So if they're sending him down, they're purely, sort of making the Will Venable as a better solution to center field than Tyler Naquin is. And I just think at 33 versus 25, you can't do that. I mean, Naquin has legit tools. He has a plus arm. He can play average defense, and he can, he's a decent hit tool.
We watched Jerry Sands and Mike Aviles and these guys play so much last year, and we wanted Tyler Holt to come. I just feel like we err on the side of veterans. Not only that, but we'll sit on them too long when they are obviously not the choice. And Will Venable just fits that mold too well for me to not be pretty scared that that's the route they're going to go.
Yeah, I
And
mean the
maybe,
fact.
we're dooming and glooming right now, but maybe they keep Naquin up, or maybe they do swing a trade, and we're jumping out of our chairs and excited. It's not like all is lost, but it just having that option out there, the fact that it just feels. And you know what? Maybe that's it. The fact that they haven't committed to Naquin. Maybe that does signify that they're pretty aggressive in a trade, because there's really no defense for keeping somebody like Will Venable. The offense, the defense, like nothing really projects to be better than what you're going to get from Naquin. So, maybe they're not committing to Naquin because they still think that they're going to fill that hole through a trade, and that's, maybe that's causing us to freak out about Venable and Davis as everyday guys solely because they are further down the trade route than what we think.
Well, and in the flip side to all this too, I mean, it could be a PR piece for the Indians. I mean, maybe, to be honest, maybe Naquin is in line for the job, and maybe they're keeping the competition hot for these other guys, PR-wise, for getting other jobs with other baseball teams. It's not good business to cut a guy like Venable, a week before the season starts. Maybe they're trying to make it look like they're really in this competition to help drum up value for them. Maybe moving to another team or moving to another organization, or maybe they have something in their minor league contract that says they have to be with the team a certain amount of time before they let them go. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something more to this. You could be right, Jeff. We do tend to veer towards a negative a little too much sometimes, but
and
it just.
A good point to that. I think that the one thing that the Indians have done well, and you see it with a lot of the pitching guys that have come through, is sell themselves as a place where veterans can go and get a chance and be treated fairly, or get that opportunity to just have their name out there for a little bit. And I think that that's an advantage for them if they can keep that relationship and guys know that they can come here and get a fair shot and maybe kind of resurrect their career. And they probably are pretty sensitive to that and making sure that they do give everybody kind of that over-the-top fair shot and make them look like they were in it till the very end, because that's how they were able to attract these guys. I think that's a good point.
Are we all happy with Tyler Naquin playing in center field? Like, has this at all changed our sort of perception of Naquin? Has this spring? Does it change it at all?
Well,
I mean, I would prefer someone else.
Yeah. Well, so Jeff? Is it like, are we looking at Naquin as being the starter and center because of the same reason why we loved Almonte? Is it because there's just big gap and now all of a sudden Naquin's like this tasty piece of, well, not steak, but maybe some hamburger over on the side in the back corner of Walmart, and we look over and since there's no other meat on the shelf, we're looking at him like steak? I don't know. I mean, he's playing great. I think a lot of us said, show me, and he's showing us, but it's spring. I don't know. Are we getting the real Naquin? Does he just look good because, I mean, there aren't many other guys there? I don't know, and I don't want to sell the guy short, and I'm not trying to snuff him out. He does have intangibles. I don't know. This is one of those guys that, I wish we had other candidates. I mean, if Ozuna was on this team, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about, how Ozuna is a great center fielder who, if we needed to transition him to right, he could transition to right and has a lot of upside. If we had, Jackie Bradley Jr., we could talk about the Gold Glove defense automatically in center field, and everything we get offensively is icing on the cake.
And I think that's kind of the thing that scares me on Naquin, is that there have been sort of mixed reviews on his defense, and you guys can speak to this better than I can, but if he's not the thing that makes Chiz valuable enough to start out there is that his defense, we assume from the sample size we have from last season, is going to be fairly close to elite. I don't know with Naquin, it seems like the reports are kind of all over the place on that. So if he's not going to be a fairly, not saying Jackie Bradley Jr. level, but a pretty damn good defensive center fielder, then that is scary. And I don't know that we know that yet. So that's the scary part to me. If I knew for sure that he was going to be a stud out there running down everything, I would be much more okay with it than I am, because I just don't know that we have that kind of confirmation yet.
So I'm gonna harp on. I think there's like there's some really good research that's been done on spring numbers and their sort of value. And the one thing that stabilizes really quickly, and one of the reasons I'm more and more positive on Naquin, is strikeout percentage stabilizes really quickly. And he's K'ing like 21% of the time, and he's close to the sort of at-bat plate appearance threshold where we start caring, where it stabilizes. So I think one of the really big things to me has been Naquin's sort of strikeout rate has stabilized to the point where we say, that's going to allow the quality of contact to really play up. So that's been super positive to me. As for his defense, man, I'm going to lean on Jim, but from what I sort of gather, it seems like it's not going to be anything worse than average. And average defense in center is actually valuable. It's when you get below average defense that hurts you. So if he has average defense in center and his bat is like just okay, that's pretty playable. I mean, that's Austin Jackson, and Austin Jackson posted a 2-WAR season last year, so that can work.
Well, Mike, I mean, I've watched him play at Carolina, and I think so. We use this in a negative in the past, and I don't know, maybe it's a positive, and let me kind of spell it out. But Naquin's a guy you don't notice. I mean, people talk about how great his arm is and how much land he can cover out there and all his great instincts and blah blah blah, and you really don't notice him. I mean, he's not a guy who makes splashy plays. He's not a guy who, even in the locker room, he's a pretty quiet guy. So I've looked at that as a negative in the past, but I guess, he doesn't really make a lot of mistakes either. Now, I do think there's some, when I say range issues, I'm not talking about massive range issues. He can get the balls, don't get me wrong. There's speed there. I do think he probably doesn't get to as many balls as some other guys out there. For example, Bradley, of course, he's elite, but he's a guy you just don't notice, and I guess in a lot of ways that's a good thing. Not a great thing. Honestly, it's a trait you want with your fourth outfielder. And I know we talk a lot about him as a fourth outfielder. That's what I've really looked at him as. I think, when you look at puzzle pieces, and we talk a lot about that with this Indians team, with the way they're making it up, he to me is a great puzzle piece to have as a fourth guy or fifth guy, because you can put him anywhere and he can kind of take away having to notice that position. So it's a good thing in that regard. I think if you see that over time defensively, I think that you're going to start to notice balls that he's not getting to, I guess is what I'm saying. And I could be wrong. I mean, this was 2 years ago. But that's what stood out to me about Naquin. And Mike, we've talked about this tons. He just doesn't stand out defensively. I hear a lot of people talk about how great a defender he is who have never seen him play. So I think we have to be really wary with regards to his defense. And Jeff, you nailed it. I mean, that's the unknown. Is he a good everyday center fielder for the major league club? And that's a big difference from Columbus. That's a big difference from Akron. That's a big difference from Carolina. I don't know. It'll be fun, hopefully, to watch. I'd love to know. It's better to know than not. But I don't know. I mean, defensively, I don't know. I mean, it's a question mark for me. But again, who are we comparing him to? We're comparing him to Venable. We're comparing him to Cowgill, who I think could be good defensively, but a whole offensively. Rajai Davis shouldn't be out there in center. Who are we comparing him to? So he is, to me, the best option, and we got to find this out now, right? We don't want to wait till like August or a stretch run to find this out. We want to know now.
And it's the same thing that I always say about Chiz, and I'm sorry to constantly be bringing up Chiz, but if you have one Chiz or one Naquin in your outfield, it's not really a big deal. But it just, we have two of them, and we don't know what we're getting out of Brantley. So it just, it's not like we're hiding one guy out there who, hey, he plays pretty good defense and his bat isn't great, but you know what? That's fine. It's okay to have an average player in that position.
I think that's kind of the story of this Indians roster. Weirdly, is you have these positions where right field is this position that we generally think of this sort of like that's where you get your power, that's where you get some offensive production from. The Indians have these like sort of dominant offensive positions in positions that are weird. Second base and shortstop are both very productive for the Indians. Catcher has been highly productive. They have all this up the middle production. And so you're saying, why can't we just get, something that's competent, in right field to really maximize the value of our infield? To me, it's a lot like how cheap our starting rotation is, yet we can't sort of bring in any value on the free market for player talent. And it's weird, and I agree, but I think it's this thing where we've maximized, we have elite talent up the middle, and then at these positions that seem like they should be easy to fill and deep in your lineup, we're left with a 250 hitter with 12 homers and a 310 OBP, and wondering where the hell we're going.
Well, so Mike, Jeff, how much sense, you bring up all this wonderful point, Jeff, of having these unknown quantities in the outfield. So to bring this full circle, geez, how much sense does Jackie Bradley Jr. make? I mean, defensively, how many mistakes does he cover up for? How much, he can play left if we need him to play left. But he can cover, if you've ever seen him play, this guy can cover some ground. He can make some guys look really good in the outfield just by being the regular center fielder. We've talked a lot about Chisenhall defensively and how can his defensive shortcoming or defensive elitism, I guess, overcome his offensive shortcomings. Could Jackie Bradley in center field be the guy, without even looking at his offense? Could he be a guy that just solidifies everything, allows Brantley not to have to be kind of that rogue defender in left, can come along kind of slowly? And if Chisenhall struggles a little bit, as he could after 51 games, could he maybe be the guy who brings everything together? And then the offense is icing. But then again, back to your point, Jeff, offensively, we have an offense built around everybody playing well. Can we afford Chisenhall hitting 140 and then Bradley doing the same with Brantley not being healthy? I don't know.
And, the Indians have obviously been looking very, very big picture. I think when you look at the moves they've made and kind of the reluctance to part with any prospects or anybody on the current roster, how much would a Jackie Bradley Jr. make sense even when a Zimmer comes up, whose defense and center field, reports don't seem to think it's going to be bad, but I certainly haven't seen much to say he's going to be elite. If we didn't have to worry about trying to play him in center, if he just comes into right field, replaces Chiz, who's fairly replaceable at that point. So if you had a Brantley, Jackie Bradley Jr., Bradley Zimmer outfield going into next season, suddenly that looks pretty great and maybe a little bit better than, a Brantley, Zimmer, Chiz, or however that would net out at the end too.
Yeah, I love this. This is the reason I think you have to address center field with an Ozuna or Bradley type. I don't buy in to either Zimmer or Frazier being anything like other than average at best in center long term. And I don't even know, I think Frazier is one of these classic, really high ceiling, really low floor guys where there's still a chance that we never see Frazier do much at all. We need to kind of embrace that reality. So to me, I think the Indians need to be looking for the center fielder of the future. And if, somehow in a freak of nature, one of those guys proves they can play there well, that's great. You have an asset to deal. And Chisenhall's going to get more expensive, so if he gets more expensive and Zimmer takes over in right and you non-tender Chisenhall or flip Chisenhall, that's fine. I think center field is a position that isn't just a hole, in 2015. To me, it seems like a longer-term hole that they're really going to have to address.
Well, I think if you listen to anybody who's watched, Zimmer or Frazier for that matter, I think you hear a lot of left field, right field projections for both. And just the fact that that is a common discussion amongst people who have watched these guys lends me to lean towards them not being exceptional in center field. I've only seen Frazier there a few times. He looks good. Looks like he gets good breaks to the ball. He looks faster than I've given him credit for in the past. But he doesn't seem to me to be a pure center fielder. He doesn't seem to have size for the corners, but he's got good power, so that can overcome that. Zimmer to me seems to be I hate to say this, throw basketball terms at this, but he almost seems to be a tweener to me. He seems to have a corner outfielder body with the center fielder offensive mentality. Maybe there's more power there than I see, but I don't know. I don't have a problem with Ozuna being on this team because of, his tangible 20 home run power with a center fielder, defensively in the making. I mean, I plus he can move to the corners if you need him to. Bradley kind of let to a lesser extent. I don't know. I don't know who I value more there, Ozuna or Bradley Jr., but I think, getting one of these two guys again, it's everything the Indians want. I mean, it's a low-cost guy right now. It's a guy they have control of at least through 2019 or 2020. I'm not sure with Bradley Jr., but, these are exactly the kind of guys you should be trading for. So if the price tag is one of the starters we mentioned, even a Clevenger, we've talked about this before. Maybe Clevenger is a guy who we value as a trade piece in a trade. I think you got to make the deal, and maybe that's what's going on right now. Again, full circle, Cafardo seems to be friendly with Francona. Just to throw it out there, he had him ranked number 4 as top managers in the game. He's had a couple of recent clear interviews with Francona, just based upon some pieces that he's written about Francona and the Indians. I think there could be something to that. I mean, maybe they had a discussion, or maybe Francona fed him some news, and maybe they really had talks, but the Indians were just doing it to shake something loose. I don't know. I tend to think with Rosenthal being in the mix here, you got Cafardo, a local guy, in the mix. You have Antonetti in the mix. There's got to be some fire to the smoke.
And can I just, and I know I talk a lot about assets and managing assets, and I know that, it's not as simple as that, but there might be no such thing as pitching depth. But man, we are at a pretty kind of scary spot where we have Tomlin and Bauer and Clevenger and House and Anderson and, a couple of other guys coming up that aren't too far. At some point, those guys are going to start losing value because they're all just kind of stuck in the middle. And I think, Bauer and Tomlin are guys who could, after this season, not have a ton of trade value. And House is a guy who could easily get buried here, as Anderson looks to be taking a leap and Clevenger might pass him. And, I know there's no such thing as pitching depth, but I think there's an opportunity cost of just not doing anything and letting some of these guys kind of, die on the vine too. So, there's a time to move, and I know it's scary to trade pitching, but we have so much right now that if we can get a center fielder who's a huge hole on this roster for a guy that we're not going to miss at all, man, if we're not doing that and that opportunity is out there, that's a big mess.
Wow. Yeah, I think the key there is, I guess maybe I'd question Clevenger, but I don't think there's a dude in that mix that I wouldn't give up for Marcell Ozuna in a heartbeat. And the sort of guys you've heard talked about that the Marlins want from Marcell Ozuna aren't, particularly exceptional. I find it hard to believe that Bauer doesn't get Ozuna done. I really do. And I think that's a deal you absolutely have to make and makes you better instantaneously. So
about this LeBron James thing. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not going there. No brotherhood talk today. Sorry. I don't know. I at the end of the day, they need to try to win this year, the Indians, and they need to address center field. And they don't need to just address center field for April. They need to address center field if they really want to make a run, because I just don't see any conglomeration of what we have right now, and this includes Naquin, although he is an unknown. I don't see the outfield that we can put together, even with Bird, even with Chisenhall, even with Davis. I mean, think about all these names. You look back to when they dealt for Murphy, and they were looking for a platoon there, and Brandon Moss, and all these lunkheads that they've had out there with the Avilases and the Sands and all these other guys that they've tried to figure out platoon matches. And you go back 5, 6, 7 years, they've tried to do this at different spots in the lineup, and it's always seemed to be the weak link that has made the team kind of sing into oblivion. And if they're dealing with that this year, with all these guys signed to long-term deals, the Gomeses and the Kipnises, and now we've got Lindor up, this guy we've been talking about for 5 years, who almost won Rookie of the Year coming up in June. We've got all of this coming together, and you're not going to address one position in the outfield with an actual everyday, not hope and pray for outfielder, especially center field. I mean, come on, this is a no-brainer. Something's got to happen. Naquin, if you're not going to do anything, Naquin needs to be the guy but I find it hard to believe this team isn't going to address it. And maybe that's why there's talk. Maybe they realize it.
Yeah, this is like the moment, the pivot point in every movie, every sports movie, where this sort of radical decision has to happen, but it's not that radical. The Indians are in the situation where they have the best sort of cost-controlled starting pitching staff in baseball. They have all these brilliant contracts that put them in a position that any team would envy. And yet we're sitting here frustrated because we feel like our hands are tied. They have assets up the wazoo. They have cost control. We're sitting at $87 million on the payroll. And we have, one position that if you attack that position, you are the clear leader in the American League Central. You have a significant advantage over your rivals in the Central. And we're sitting there and they haven't addressed it. And the door's wide open for them to address it. It's frustrating to me in that we laud this front office because they're exceptional at creating an advantage in terms of locking up talent long term and acquiring assets. But at the end of the day, what is that going to matter if we're sitting at 86 and 76 and Tyler Naquin posts one WAR and it's September and we're 2 games out of the wild card? I'm sick of that. I'm a huge front office shill, but we're at a point here where I think they have to sort of open the window up wider for this roster.
Well, there's a pod there for that flex spending you keep talking about, Mike, that we need to get into, not today, but they if you're going to stay around 85, 86 million and you're not going to go above that, and I know they have dead money to worry about, I get that, but if you never shake the tree, if you never take the step, and we're not talking about a major step here. Jeff, when do we have surplus in anything in the minors? Never. Never. This is a rarity for this team in the past 10 years. This is, you deal from surplus. And while you don't ever have depth, you also don't ever really have prospects. I mean, you listen to any good management system, they'll tell you prospects are made to make your major league product better, and that's either by bringing them up because they're locks or by dealing them away. Doing nothing with them is a fireable offense. So you make the move, and it's not like Ozuna is. I mean, he's a get. You can get him. It's not like it seems like Bradley's a get. Desmond Jennings. I mean, we talk about Naquin being a guy who could kind of right the ship a little bit. There's less questions about Desmond Jennings. I'd be ecstatic with that. I mean, he's a center fielder. He's a legit center fielder. And you can put him in the offense somewhere and make him be effective. So to me, everything is pointing to making a deal. Now, maybe there's something we don't know. Maybe the Marlins don't want a deal. Maybe the Red Sox are just a smokescreen. Maybe Jennings isn't available. I don't know. But it seems to me like the Indians are trying to make something happen and realize it. So hope for the best, I guess.
All right. With that, we should probably let some of these gentlemen who have their spouses around get off and go spend time with them, for the sake of remaining spouses. I'm Mike Hattery, Jeff Nomina, Jim Pete. We're signing off. Thanks for listening.